for being such great hosts. And I want to thank all of you for taking the time to be here. I see the mayor of Columbus is here, a great friend, somebody who's going to be running and I hope winning for the U.S. Senate. Lee Fisher is here, and Mary Jo Kilroy is here. We got one of the best senators, I believe, in the United States Senate, and Sherrod Brown is here, and one of the finest governors in the country, Ted Strickland, is here. So give those folks a big round of applause. Should we tell them to take off their jackets, too? Take off your jackets, guys. Lighten up a little bit. Sheesh. This is just a great opportunity for me to have a conversation with you, and I don't want this to be too formal. What I want to do is have a chance to listen to you and also answer your questions. What we try to do whenever we are in a setting like this is to talk about the things that folks are going through day to day. Because, look, I'll be honest with you, sometimes when you're in Washington, you get caught up with particular legislative battles or media spin on certain issues, and sometimes you lose touch in terms of what folks are talking about around the kitchen table. One of the ways that I stay in touch is through events like this, as well as reading letters from constituents and voters all across the country every night. And obviously, what's on a lot of people's minds right now is the economy. We went through the worst recession that we've had since the Great Depression. And when I was sworn in about 18 months ago, we had already lost several million jobs, and we were about to lose several million more. We lost 800,000 jobs the month I was sworn in. And so we had to act fast and take some emergency steps to prevent the economy from going back into what could have been a Great Depression. And we were successful in doing so. We stabilized the economy, we stabilized the financial system, we didn't have a complete meltdown, whereas we were losing jobs in the private sector, when I was first sworn in, we're now gaining jobs, and we've gained jobs 7 consecutive months in the private sector. The economy was shrinking about 6%. The economy is now growing. So we've made progress, but let's face it, the progress hasn't been fast enough. And Joe and Rhonda and I were just talking about the challenges that they've had to go through when Rhonda got laid off. And, by the way, also lost her health insurance in the process at a time when her son was going through some significant medical needs. So, in addition to trying to stop the crisis, what we also wanted to do was make sure that we were helping people get back on their feet. So, something that I'm very pleased with is that Rhonda was able to use the provisions that we passed to help her get COBRA, so that she had health insurance, could keep her health insurance at a time when the family was very much in need. And millions of people across the country have been able to keep their health insurance. We've also been trying to help our state and local governments so that they're not having to lay off as many teachers and firefighters and police officers. And I know that I think the mayor and the governor would acknowledge that the help that we provided them has really helped to plug some big budget holes. And in addition, what we've been trying to do is to build infrastructure that puts people back to work, but also improves the quality of life in communities like Columbus. So Joe is an architect, and he's now working on a new police station that was funded in part with Recovery Act funds. So all these things have made a difference, but we've still got a long way to go. And so a couple of things that we're focused on right now is, number one, making sure that small businesses are getting help, because small businesses, like Joe's architectural firm, are really the key to our economy. They create 2 out of every 3 jobs. And so we want to make sure that they're getting financing. We want to make sure that we are cutting their taxes in certain key areas. One of the things that we've done, for example, is proposed that we eliminate capital gains taxes on small businesses so that when they're starting up and they don't have a lot of cash flow, that's exactly the time when they should get a break and they should get some help. We're focusing as well on trying to figure out, can we build more infrastructure here in Ohio and all across the country that puts people back to work? Not just building roads and bridges, but also building things like high-speed rail or building broadband lines that can connect communities and give people access to the internet at a time when that's going to be critical in terms of long-term economic development. We're also going to have to look at how do we, over the long term, get control of our deficit, and that's obviously something that a lot of people have on their minds. The key is to make sure that we do so in a way that doesn't impede recovery, but rather gives people confidence over the medium and the long term. And I'm going to be happy to talk about what we're doing in terms of spending. But overall, the main message that I want to deliver before I start taking questions, and I said this to Joe and Rhonda, is slowly but surely we are moving in the right direction. We're on the right track. The economy is getting stronger, but it really suffered a big trauma. And we're not going to get all 8 million jobs that were lost back overnight. It's going to take some time. And businesses are still trying to get more confident out there before they start hiring. And people, consumers, are not going to start spending until they feel a little more confident that the economy is getting stronger. And so what we're trying to do is create sort of a virtuous cycle where people start feeling better and better about the economy. And a lot of it's sort of like recovering from an illness. You get a little bit of stronger each day, and you take a few more steps each day. And that's where our economy is at right now. What we can't afford to do is to start going backwards and doing some of the same things that got us into trouble in the first place. This is why it's been so important for us to, for example, to pass something like Wall Street reform, to make sure that we're not creating the same kinds of financial bubbles and the massive leverage and the reckless risks that helped to create this problem in the first place. And I am very proud that we've got somebody like a Sherrod Brown or Mary Jo who worked really tirelessly with us in Congress to make sure that we don't have a situation where we've got to bail out banks that have taken reckless risks, that we are monitoring what's happening in the financial system a lot more carefully, that making sure people aren't cheated when it comes to their mortgages or that there are a bunch of hidden fees in their credit cards that help to create some of the problems that we've seen in the financial systems. We can't go back to doing things the way we were doing them before. We've got to go forward. That's what we're trying to do. And hopefully, as we continue over the next several months and next several years, we're going to see a Columbus and an Ohio and a United States of America that is going to be stronger than it was before this crisis struck. I am absolutely confident of that, but we got more work to do. All right? So with that, what I want to do is I just want to open it up, and you guys can ask me questions about anything, and just ignore all these cameras who are here. Pretend they're not there. The only thing I would ask is introduce yourselves so that I get a chance to know you, or if you haven't met one of your neighbors, there's a good chance for you to do so. But why don't we start with this gentleman right here? And we've got some mics. The only reason, the main reason we're using mics is so that these folks behind us can hear you. But this gentleman right here.
Hi, President Obama. I hope I don't pass out while I'm asking this question. So, my question is actually about health care. My brother is disabled. He is definitely what I would consider one of the working poor. He will not mature anymore as far as mindset of a 12-year-old. Right now he works, washing dishes at a local restaurant. And unfortunately, because the employer does not offer health care insurance, one whole check, which is 2 weeks' worth of work, has to actually go towards him just paying for Cobra, which is obviously well out of his budget, but he has to simply because of various illnesses that he suffers from. My question is, unfortunately, I'm not able to sit down and read a 2,000-page bill or law with all the reform that happened with healthcare. With the present reforms that went into place, how will that help him? And if it doesn't, then how will I know that you're not done with healthcare? How will the latest changes that you want to happen with healthcare? How will that help him? And thank you for doing such a wonderful job.
Well, thank you. Here's how specifically health reform should help your brother. Number one, it gives an incentive to his employer to provide health insurance, because one of the key components of healthcare reform was providing employers a 35% tax break on the premiums they pay for their employees. Right? So basically, it's cutting his potential costs, the employer's potential costs for providing your brother with health insurance. It's cutting it by a third. That's step number one. And there are going to be companies out there that say, you know what, we want to provide health insurance, but we just couldn't afford to do it. But now that it's costing us up to a third less, saving us thousands of dollars, maybe we should go ahead and provide coverage for that. Okay, so that is step number one. Step number two is, if the employer still doesn't provide coverage, over the next couple of years, your brother is going to be able to join a pool, what we're calling an exchange, where he can basically buy the same kind of insurance that these members of Congress are buying. And the advantage that he's going to have is that now he's part of a pool of millions of people who are buying it all at the same time, which means they've got leverage the same way big companies are able to lower their cost per employee because the insurance company really wants their business. Well, now your brother could be part of the same pool that these guys are, and that's going to give leverage, which will lower his rates. And the final part of it is, if even with these lower rates, this better deal, he still can't afford it, then we're going to provide some subsidies to help him. So all those things combined should help make sure that your brother is getting health insurance. Now, one of the things that I think people may not be aware of is that although this exchange isn't going to be set up until 2014 because it takes a while, we've got to set it up right, there's some immediate things that are helping right now. If your child has a pre-existing condition, insurance companies starting this year will not be able to deny those children coverage. And that's a big deal for a lot of folks whose children may have diabetes or some other illness and right now can't get insurance. Insurance companies are going to have to provide them insurance. That's number one. Number two, how many people here have kids who are college age, about to go to college? All right. Well, one of the things you're going to be able to do is when those kids get out of college, if they don't get insurance right away, they're going to be able to stay on your insurance until they're 26 years old. That's a big deal because a lot of times that first job or those first couple of jobs out of college are the ones that don't provide health insurance. So there are a number of changes that are being made right now that will make those of you who have health insurance more secure with the insurance that you have. We're eliminating lifetime limits. There's a bunch of fine print on the insurance forms that sometimes have ended up creating real problems for people. Your insurance company decides to drop you right when you get sick, just when you need it most. Those kinds of practices are over now. And the final aspect of health reform that's important is that by changing the incentives for how doctors get paid under Medicare and under Medicaid, we're actually encouraging doctors to become